Welcome to 100 Yards of Football. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. Today, my NFL history video is the legend out of the University of Arkansas, Dan Hampton. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. I'm your host, Vincent Turner. And it's always a pleasure and an honor to talk about all the great players that played in the National Football League. And one that came from my school that I graduated from in 1982, the University of Arkansas. So before we get started, talking about this former Razorback and Chicago Bear legend, I like to do something to give kudos to the Razorback Nation. Ooh, Pig, Suey. Ooh, Pig, Suey. Ooh, Pig, Suey. Razorbacks. If you're not a part of the Razorback family, you didn't attend school there, you don't know what I'm talking about. But kudos and blessings to the University of Arkansas. Let me talk about this great football player, Dan Hampton. When I first came across Dan Hampton, I'm going to go back. When I was deciding, I was a senior at Southside High School in 1977. In 1978, I watched the Orange Bowl. The number one ranked Oklahoma Sooners taking on the University of Arkansas, who was 6 at the time, had a pretty good record, 11-1 on the year. But if you remember something about that football game, Arkansas had suspended 3 highly offensive players, 2 of them, Danny Bobo and Ben Cowens. So I'm watching the game with my father, Chester Turner, and I'm saying to myself, it's no way this Razorback team can even stay on the floor with the Oklahoma team. They had Billy Sims, David Overstreet, Kenny King, and the guy that wore the banana from San Antonio, Texas, Thomas Locke. But you know what? Arkansas upset Oklahoma that evening, 31-6. And I saw a guy that dominated the line of scrimmage, Dan Hampton. And I said, you know what? He's a pretty good football player. I haven't elected to what school I was going to go to, but I made my decision in March that I was going to attend the University of Arkansas. And I never forget this. This is a true story to Razorback Nation. If you ever been on the campus, everybody know about Buchanan Drake Hall. It's not far down the hill from Wilson Sharp Athletic Dorm. So my first day of class in August, it's hot, man. It's about 100 degrees. Yes, sir, down up in the hills in northern Arkansas. And I'm going to class. I had an 8:30 class in the morning. And I'm seeing all these football players coming up the stairs, coming from Wilson Shaw. So I look, and I said, man, I'm looking at this guy. He's 6'5", and this guy about 280. And he got on flip-flops, got on shorts. And I said, oh, my God, this is the second coming of Hercules. And it was Dan Hampton. And, man, his chest was like an explosion off of a bench press, just huge. His chest was just big. And I said, you know what? That's got to be Dan Hampton. I went and did my research. And then I followed him the first game that year against Vanderbilt. He's a senior at that time now. And they playing against a good Vanderbilt team in Little Rock Memorial Stadium. First game I ever attended. And if you know about War Memorial Stadium, it's a stadium that seats about 55,000, but everybody is on top of you. And that evening, Arkansas beat Vanderbilt 48-17. That Vanderbilt team had Van Helfen, they had Preston Brown that played in the NFL. And the reason I went to that game, I wanted to see, they had a guy that was a freshman, like I was, that played wide receiver, Raymond Buggs, who ended up being the player of the year in high school football, basketball, and baseball, the prep athlete of the year. So I wanted to see him get some time. But the guy that dominated the line of scrimmage was Dan Hampton. And boy, he was special. He was a first-team All-American that year. Ended up playing on one of the greatest Arkansas teams in 1977, that team that upset Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, Ron Calcagney, Ben Cowens, Trent Bryant, Michael Forrester, a young George Stewart, who ended up becoming one of the top NFL assistants in the game, Van Lusby, William Hampton, a great kicker in Steve Little, Larry Jackson, Jerry Sexton, Bobby Duckworth, That by far was the best Arkansas football team from a talent standpoint that's ever been on the campus. But I followed Mr. Hampton's career. First round pick of the Chicago Bears, had an outstanding career, was the MVP in 1982 on a losing team now, a defensive MVP, had 10 sacks that year. But this is the thing that really separated Dan Hampton was his versatility and sacrifice for the football team and the Chicago Bears. He moved from defensive end to defensive tackle. And you saw what that 85 defense done. But what Dan Hampton did that was most improving, that improved not only the Bears organization, but that defensive 85 was his skill set was very, very special. The instincts, A+. The explosion, A+. That leverage. If you go back and look at his film, the leverage, how he used to play in the line of scrimmage. The tackling, A+. He was a hitter. The acceleration and burst when you come off the line of scrimmage. The power rush. The versatility, as I just told you. Move from defensive end to defensive tackle. In that 85 season, I'm sorry, the Chicago Bears, I think that 85 team really don't get the respect and the same lore as some of the greatest teams that ever played in the National Football League. But from a defensive standpoint, there was no better defense that's ever stepped on the face of the earth in the National Football League, high school, college, any level. That defense, led by Mr. Dan Hampton, defensive tackle, Steve McMichael, defensive tackle, William Perry, defensive tackle, Richard Dent, Tennessee State finest, the linebackers, unbelievable, uncontrollable, explosive, Mike Singletary out of Baylor, Wilbur Marshall out of Florida, the great Otis Wilson by way of Syracuse, Louisville, in the secondary that don't get a lot of respect. The young man that's a D coordinator with the Buffalo Bills, Leslie Frazier, representing Alcorn State University. The other corner, out of Arizona State, Mr. Mike Richardson. And the safeties, Dave Dorson, Notre Dame's finest, and Gary Fenwick. Dan Hampton led that defense that was special. 64 sacks. Only gave up 198 points. 2 shutouts in the playoffs. Won the Super Bowl and beat New England 46-10. Only gave up 123 total yards. And the guy that was behind it was a gentleman out of Jacksonville, Arkansas, the University of Arkansas, 4-time Pro Bowler, 1980 All-Decade NFL team, the 100 greatest players of all time, NFL career, 79 sacks, games played 157, 1 safety, NFL Player of the Year from the defensive standpoint in 1982 on a losing Chicago Bears team. They went 3-6. My man, Dan Hampton, out of the University of Arkansas. And you could take this for granted. When you talk about grading football players that are the toughest to play this game on any level, I give Dan Hampton at the top of my list, the best that ever done it. From a toughest standpoint. The young man, when you talk about toughness as a football player, and I'm going to keep elaborating on that, A+, 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 and the reason, he had 19 knee surgeries. 19 knee surgeries. And he came out of school that I graduated from, the University of Arkansas. He's one of the most proud football players that's ever came out of that school. We could talk about the famous alum, which is Jerry Jones, that was a guard on the 1964 National Championship team. And, of course, Jimmy Johnson. Of course, Billy Ray Smith. Of course, Gary Anderson. There were some of the great players that played at that school. But I was fortunate as a true freshman to see him play 1 year. And I knew once he went into the NFL, I knew that he was going to be great, but I didn't know it was going to be at that level. And to tell you how special his career really is, he went to an organization that wasn't winning at the time. The Chicago Bears were in a dump. But see, he stayed there. He became a free agent in 1982 and could have went somewhere else for more money. But he decided to stay there with the great Walter Payton. They had just drafted Jim McMahon. And you saw what happened. The Chicago Bears 1985 defense is going to go down as one of the greatest ever. And it's because of this young man here, Mr. Dan Hampton. I'm proud and honored, Pig Suey, to do this video on this young man. And if I see him out in public, I'm going to say, Mr. Hampton, you are the greatest and toughest football player that ever played the D-tackle position in the National Football League. So my final words to Mr. Hampton, he's also a moonlighting musician since he's retired from the league. And one of his favorite musicians that died a couple of years ago, country music star, Mr. Merle Haggard, had a song that went out like this, The Branded Man. I like to hold my head up and be proud of who I am, but they won't let me. They won't let my secret go untold. I'm going to say it one more time. And it's to all the people that watch 100 Yards of Football. I like to hold my head up and be proud of who I am, but they won't let my secret go untold. Dan Hampton told a very special secret when he got to the National Football League. Hall of Famer in 1999. And all I can say is this. One more time as I end the video today. To the Razorback Nation. To the Chicago Bears. That's my father's favorite team. Mr. Chester Turner, who's watching it down there from the 901 in Memphis, Tennessee. If you went to the University of Arkansas, you know where I'm coming from. If you didn't, you can't relate. Whoa, Pig, Suey. Whoa, Pig, Suey. Whoa, Pig, Suey. Razorbacks. Be blessed. 100 yards of football.